circulates through the whole economy. So they get to spend it at the previously existing array of prices. So they enjoy a windfall. By the time the average person receives the new money, he has been paying the rising prices to which the new money gives rise all that time. So the windfall of those with political connections who get the money early comes at the direct expense, a direct wealth transfer from the average person. That is an insidious wealth transfer mechanism, and one hardly anyone is aware is occurring. Ludwig von Mises also blamed the inflation of the money supply through the banking system for the business cycle, the boom-bust cycle that afflicts our economy. There have been many explanations for this cycle. Karl Marx claimed that it's an inherent part of capitalism with all its contradictions, so-called. Others have claimed there is a psychological explanation for the business cycle. Investors suddenly become skittish and nervous. If that were the case, we should simply drug all our investors, and they would never become apprehensive again. What Mises argued, and what F.A. Hayek won the Nobel Prize for arguing, was that it is precisely the increase in the money supply by the central bank and the artificial lowering of interest rates below the level the free market would have set them that sets in motion an unsustainable boom in the economy. It distorts investment decisions into patterns that the economy will not be able to sustain in the long run, because they are not based on real savings. They are based only on manipulation. Now, there is much, much, much more to say about Mises' theory of the business cycle, which you can read about in many of Mises' works. Just in Google, type Mises and business cycle. And I've done some speaking on YouTube and writing on it. Thomas Wood's business cycle. There's some of that. Now, since the Federal Reserve System, the central bank of the United States, was created, the United States dollar has lost 95% of its value. That's actually a pretty good record by the standards of central banks. But notice what this does to people. It makes it difficult for people to save for the future. Only a fool would try to save for the future by piling up stacks of US dollars so that 30 years later, in his old age, he can spend them. Their value will be cut by 2/3 at least by that time. So what does the average person now have to do? Because his government keeps increasing the paper money supply, what does he have to do to save for the future? He can't pile up green pieces of paper. He must become a speculator. He must enter the financial markets and purchase financial products he may know nothing about. Most of us don't belong anywhere near the financial markets, but people must do this now to defend themselves and the value of their savings from the ravages of inflation. Now, meanwhile, the system that prevailed before fiat money, the system we are all taught to fear, the great boogeyman of economic history, a system in which gold and sometimes silver were money. Look at the track record of gold. I can speak for the United States. If you spent $100 in the year 1800, in the year 1900, you could get the same thing for about $100. The value of the money was absolutely maintained over that period. But from 1900 to 2010, your dollar would be worth 4 cents, 5 cents. Now, suppose the situation were reversed. Suppose central banks had preserved the value of our money and gold had eroded it. We would never hear the end of it. Now, finally, do we need reforms? Do we need marginal reforms around the edges? No. We need a radical restructuring. We need a completely new system. Hayek himself, the Nobel Prize winner, in the late 1970s, began to speculate that we can never again expect governments to give us good money. They have absolutely no incentive to do so. Monopolies in the provision of money are no better than monopolies in the provision of any other good. At the very least, we ought to remove legal tender laws that give artificial special privileges to the monopoly currency of a country and allow people freely to transact in whatever currency, including gold and silver, from which we would remove all taxes that they desire. We are all familiar with the expression separation of church and state. But if we believe in freedom, we want to separate everything and state. Because what is the state? It is nothing but a gun to your head. It is organized violence. That is how the state achieves all its ends. And we, as those who believe in liberty, believe there is a more humane way for human beings to interact with each other than at the end of a gun. Bastiat called the state the great fiction by which everyone attempts to live at the expense of everyone else and impoverishing themselves in the process. So we want separation of state, of agriculture and state, of industry and state. May every public-private partnership be banished from the face of the earth. But if we believe in freedom and peace and prosperity, we also need the separation of money and state. Because if we do not achieve this, and we leave the state with its magical money creation machine, all our other victories will have been in vain. Thank you.